Okay, we're in business. Todd, happy Monday.
Let's go. Indeed.
Okay, let me introduce you to the world. Um, Todd, you are a three-time CISO. You're a startup advisor and investor with over 25 years of experience in IT management and security. You are a cloud and security leader who drives innovation and business value in high growth tech and biotech industries. You leverage cloud computing, AI, ML, IoT, and blockchain to transform enterprise operations and security. Your most notable advisory gigs, which you have way too many. Everyone just go to his LinkedIn. Like there's just too much on this resume. But are with Zoom. There's a lot. Like there's a whole handful.
I wrote
Like
that
you
a
can
long
have a
time
drinking
ago.
game. Well, your most notable advisor gigs are with Zoom and Box since 2017, and that's pre-pandemic, which is epic. That sounds like you've had a lot of great years of just madness, awesome madness. But besides all the amazing things that you've done in your whole entire career, I want to just kind of shout out to you how you and I first met. And this is my compliment to you because I remember it so clearly
Oh
to hear
no.
this because whenever they meet you, this is how I feel about you. So when we met at the Four Seasons, that cybersecurity leader dinner party thingamabobber, it was an awesome time. There's a lot of leaders there, and we were on like different sides of like the room. You're yapping over there, I'm yapping over here, and at the end of the night, I'm at like the head of the table, basically the head end of the table. There's a few of us left, kind of thing, and I was having a really vibrant as I'm very animated, but very vibrant conversation with Martin, that security leader from, Martin, the security leader at ClickHouse. And we're having like a real freaking back and forth because we both worked in Australia. And so we're just going really at it. And you come in and you took a seat right next to me. And I would never forget this. You were so stoic, but you were so respectful. And you waited until our conversation ended. You didn't butt in. You didn't or like seem like perturbed or anything. Like you just had incredible table manners. And that's what it was. It was table manners.
Table manners. Nice.
Just felt like, when you're in a board meeting and you go into the meeting halfway or something like that, it was that level of respect that I felt. I was like, wow, I feel like I could really have a really great relationship with this person. And that was because you didn't say anything. How you presented. But what it felt like is like, oh, he's someone that I feel like I would be able to have a very respectful conversation with and a professional relationship with. So since then, and it doesn't stop there, since then, that was like so long ago. Feels like it really was. And then since then, it was just like, with the texting, you're so responsive. And to me, the number one thing about business is being responsive and having that relationship building skill. And so that just showed me how much experience you have in the business. So thank you so much for just leading by example. And I'm saying this out loud for everyone to take a page out of your book. Because it would do them wonders.
Being stealth.
Yeah. So let's transition from a closed door dinner party to behind a closed door boardroom party with these topics. So the first topic is risk, board, and startup advisory because you have so much background in that and there's so much we can play ping pong on. The first question is just as an icebreaker and for everyone to kind of get to know you a little bit more. What does safety and security mean to you, both professionally and personally?
I mean, it just means like trust and resilience, kind of creating an environment where people and computers and systems can kind of operate without fear of being disrupted. I guess you can call it that.
Mm.
Trying to be proactive and aware of everything that's going on, building a strong culture, things like that. That's a pretty kumbaya answer, but in reality, it's a little different. But personally, safety to me is things like not bungee jumping or going in hot air balloons or parachuting, things like that.
Yeah. High
Also,
risk
I'm getting,
activities.
yeah, exactly. I'm getting pretty old, so getting up quickly, things like that. I got to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
really careful. And then just try to stay as healthy as possible. I hate getting sick, so I
Yes.
always drink my Zip Fizz.
That's
Got to
awesome.
have your
I drink
vitamins.
emergency every day. I haven't
Nice.
been sick in a really long time. Amazing. Okay, so then can you share specific examples where senior management's lack of action or decision making in security led to significant consequences, which eventually changed their view and resulted in an increased security budget? Because we all know how much that could be a battle. And how did this impact the organization, and what could have been done differently to prevent this outcome? Can you provide an example that you can kind of talk through? Because a lot of people, there is the business side of it, which is what makes you such a great strategist and a great organizational leader.
So it's really comes down to personal experience with security. So I was at a company many years ago. Don't want to call
Mm-hmm.
them out, but I was trying to deploy Duo security for two-factor authentication, and the CEO was like, he was not having it. Um, he's like, "Oh, it's such a pain to lift up my phone and type a code or hit OK."
He didn't want to do
So
it.
he didn't
Yeah.
want to do it. So fast forward a little bit, some hacker got a hold of his email, his personal email password, and then sent out a bunch of malware to his entire address book.
Fuck.
Whoops. And so everybody got pretty pissed at him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, Todd, can you fix this for me?" I'm like, "Well, I can fix your email, but I can't fix the damage, right?"
Yeah.
And then he's like, "All right, tell me about this thing you want to deploy again and how it works." So this is a guy, see, I won't say a typical CEO, but he kept all his passwords in Outlook
Mm.
in some plain file, right? And so just from working on his computer all the time, I knew all his passwords, or he used the same password for everything. So
Yeah.
I sat down at his desk and I was like, you use E-Trade, right?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." So I go to etrade.com, I type in his email address, log in with his password. There's no two-factor back then with E-Trade. So I can see all his money. I'm like, "Okay, I can just transfer money to me if I want." And he's like, "Oh, that's not good." So,
You did that right then and there, right next to him?
right, he was sitting next to me. And so through his personal experience, he became a huge security advocate for the company. And instead of me in IT sending an email out saying, "Hey, we're going to do this," and nobody actually reading it,
Yeah.
typical IT emails, he sent an email out and said, "Hey, this is what we're going to do. I don't want what happened to me happen to anybody else." And then he added, additionally, if you need help with your personal emails and helping to secure those, go talk to IT. And so I'm not going to say it prevented any huge breaches, but potentially it could.
Wow. You know what, Todd? That is some ballsy stuff. etrade.com. Boom. That part of it, I'm like, dang.
Yeah, they don't
Okay.
like that when you can touch their money.
Nope, not like that. Okay, wow, that was a very strong one. So then how do you use tools like RACI when other stakeholders are involved to help senior management understand not only their role, but also their responsibility to cybersecurity, especially if they're not necessarily directly in the conversations with, let's say, a CISO and, a CEO, or maybe and with the CFO, but they're the other C-suite on the board?
Well, I mean, the RACI question, it's more for mature organizations.
That's true.
Not sure if I ever worked for one, but who knows? And even if I did write a RACI model at some point, whether everybody read it or not is a
Yeah.
whole different thing, right?
Like an employee
So,
handbook, right?
right, or any policies that you
Sure.
have to read
Yeah.
and approve. So
Yeah.
I'll give you I'm sitting on a panel at a conference answer first.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you have to define all the roles and responsibilities for any incidents that happen or whatever, right? What does the reporting structure look like? All that good stuff. And of course, everything has to align to business goals these days. So, how do we do that? Because my whole career, IT and security, have been trying really hard to gain visibility
Yeah.
as helping the org, not just being a cost center.
Yes.
So that's still a challenge today.
Totally.
And I'm so tired of the seat at the table conversation. It's just dumb to me. But we have to keep fighting for our place, is what's happening.
100%.
And then what I like is moving the accountability part of it up to the top, right? To management, senior management. The CEO should ultimately be responsible, especially when it comes to like D&O insurance, because most CISOs are not on it. So I would refuse to sign any important documents, right? That could have consequences to come back. Because if you read the news at all, you see CISOs getting sued,
Oh my gosh.
pulled
Yeah.
into court, thrown into jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want any of that. Yeah. I mean, just this morning across my Slack, the CISO from Exabeam, Tyler Farrar, posted this thing on LinkedIn called the CISO Paradox. And I didn't read it, but I read the title and it pretty much summed it up. It says, with great responsibility comes little to no power. And that's something we're kind of stuck in.
Yeah.
Some CISOs have figured out the formula and are actually sitting at the table, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure you have everybody's buy-in. That's important. But to sum up the whole RACI thing, all you need is a solid, actionable, tested incident response plan.
Yeah.
Which
I love it. It's like
most
a fire
companies don't
drill,
have.
right?
Right.
It's like if the fire alarm went off, what are we doing? Who's going to talk to who? Yeah, literally. Because if the CEO is on vacation, what is that CEO going to do from their vacation house, right? Or like the warehouse is on fire, right? Like, why would you call the CEO? So, and then the CEO also has the, I like your example beforehand. It's like until it happens to them personally and they understand how much consequences there actually is, you shouldn't really have to find out in that way, especially if you were hacked in that way too. Okay.
Working as a consultant, my eyes have opened up a lot more too, because I see most of these plans aren't actionable in any way. And if you just read the news, people are still getting hacked on
all
a
the
daily
time, and
basis.
it's just increasing every single day, and that's why it's just like so important to talk about this, that it's not just about like the IT department, it's not just the engineering department, you know, it's not just C-suite either, and the RACI of like even the front line of, you know, what makes a business is customers. So when you're having that data, which we'll touch in later on, sorry, I'm jumping hell a bit, but when you touch on later on of customers, and when we go into the whole startup phase, I'm just like, it's a very very passionate about this conversation, because in enterprise we have a lot of things in place to mitigate a lot of this stuff, but for more immature and early stage, you know, companies that don't have that same resources, no matter how much money that they backed up to begin with, or feels like that they have that security of backing, you know, they might not have the same SOPs or, policies or anything in place to actually protect what is happening on the day to day, regardless of how many customers that they have. It could be one big customer in B2B. It could be one huge customer, and you are in charge of so many things that you didn't realize you had all these responsibilities. And cybersecurity does cost a lot in the sense of it's an investment, so you don't have to pay a huge cost later on. So, and yeah, you're right. RACI, project management, even that's not something until you go into an enterprise level that people actually value, the routing of things and why it's so important and to be on top of it. And it's not something you just push under the rug.
Right.
So we'll go to the next question of what advice would you give to founders who think it'll never happen to us when it comes to cybersecurity risks?
I mean, cover the basics, like get EDR, firewalls, encryption, basic identity security, definitely MFA, just-in-time access to elevated privileges. And it doesn't have to be expensive because there's this huge startup ecosystem, right, that covers pretty much everything. So just talk to your other startup friends and kind of swap solutions, and you can get it cheap or free as you're starting out as a company. And then as you reach your maturity level, then start implementing more of this. And then also for startups, compliance is important. Get your SOC 2, get your ISO. I'll never say compliance is security, but with startups, compliance is security because it does cover these basic things. But yeah, I see hacks all the time, and they're not really targeted. If you look at the dark web, all your passwords and assets and things are for sale out there for really cheap too. And so you just have to be diligent.
100%. All right, let's dive into our passionate topic of proactive data protection and PII. Very passionate about this. How do you help organizations shift from a reactive to a proactive approach to security, especially in frontline areas like customer service and account management, who are really, they might not be paid as much as C-suite, and they might have more churn as well. And especially in the startup ecosystem, even past Series A too. I mean, for them to be going in and out, and they're handling a lot of this customer data, the customers' data too, especially in B2B. And when sales cycles can be really long or short, and let's say they're really banking on retention as well, but they're the ones who are really connecting with that data. So, how would you talk about that in as a business use case of how you approach it to change the conversation in the boardroom from reactive to proactive?
I mean, you have to build a culture of security, right? Have your security awareness. Don't make it boring. People have to be somewhat interested in it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if gamification still works. Maybe it does. I saw memes work pretty good. Empowering people, recognition, awards. So Todd Barnum, the guy from the CISO at GoPro, is a master at this. I probably suck at it, but he's great at it. If you want to talk to him he can talk all day about it. Definitely have super clear policies and processes. Phishing is so good now, it's hard to really do phishing simulations effectively, but definitely do phishing testing, tell people what to look for, continuous education, but just snippets at a time. You don't want to overwhelm people with all this security training.
Frequency wise, so like if a CEO or founder were to be listening to this right now, they're like, okay, how often should I be doing this? to be talking about it because every single day, every business is vulnerable. It changes all the time. A security solution that could have been last year or 2 years ago may not apply today. And so how frequent do you think they should do like a all hands on deck, town hall kind of situation, or even an email from a CEO to say how important this is, especially with a work from home culture as well?
Yeah, I mean, quarterly at a minimum. The CEO should always be talking about it. Because, I mean, if you're a startup, one security incident could totally sink you.
Wipe you in a second.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to be super proactive. I see a lot of startups hiring CISOs slash field CISOs, which field CISOs are just fine because they're not going to help you with go to market, but they're going to help your basic security strategy as well. And they should be helping with compliance, and you have to just be open with your customers how you approach security.
What do you see as the running advice to how they are transparent with their customers or prospects?
I mean, answer the security questionnaires honestly. If you have a shortfall, just say you don't do this. We don't do this yet, but we should probably take a look at it, especially as you move up to the chain and get bigger customers, because they're going to be more picky about what your posture looks like if you ever want to sell to them.
100%. Okay, so then how do you communicate the importance of securing sensitive data like PII while adapting to modern business needs? So, for example, when I was doing really huge advertising campaigns nationwide, it didn't matter what industry. It could be airlines, it could be banks. It doesn't really matter. The point is that they had a shit ton of customers. So whatever we're doing a massive campaign and we're sending a bunch of people and traffic, into the products and then into their world, that means that every single endpoint had to be completely secured, whether it's from their website or, their apps or whatever the case is of however that we are putting all the attention on them. And so when we were dealing with that, we were very creative as well with what those campaigns look like. So like third-party vendors of how we're going to use some of the PI to make sure that it's customer testimonials as well. Just like in B2B, you have customer testimonials. Well, on those campaigns, they have the same thing too. We just do it in a different way. But we want to be able to show it's real customers, right? And so, but at the same time, we have to be so cautious and work with legal to say, hey, we're not going to give out certain information. It might be like Bob McGraw Jr. It might be like Bob M. Dot. So we're not providing Bob was on flight 187
Right.
kind of thing, and he was there at 12 p.m. kind of like we had to still, but making everyone happy was basically my job in making sure that we could be as creative as possible. That was an idea that was already sold in with the marketing department on the client side. That went all the way up through the chain. We had to make everything work basically, and everyone happy. And so having legal conversations have been very normal in some shape or form. But what were those conversations like for you?
I mean, it's really, we'll probably talk about business speak a lot, but really tie everything you do in security to a business goal, right? How does data security apply to a business goal? Are we holding customer data? What kind of data are we holding? What's our sensitive data? How important is that? Be compliant. Security should be more of a business enabler, not a barrier, really.
Yeah.
Um,
What if the CEO doesn't have answers to those questions? What would be the first steps that allows you to bridge that so that you can get to that step that you're used to, but maybe they're not used to?
Education, stories about other companies that were breached in their industry, something that's close to them. So, I mean, I've worked for CEOs that would send me a news article, a link to it, and the email would just say, "We're good, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And I would just have to say, "Yep, we're good." but I
That's a
mean,
good way
focus
to
on the
put it.
financial, legal, reputational, right?
Yeah.
What would a PII breach cost us? Probably a lot.
Yeah, and even talking about like healthcare or like biotech, for example. I mean, you have, I mean, the billings, the constant billings going into insurance and such, like, whew. And we see that a lot today. Okay, so let's move on to the vendor 360 evaluation process topic because I think as an advisor and angel investor in security startups, you have seen the marketplace kind of go back and forth from a buyer standpoint and a seller standpoint. So what industry standards do you expect vendors to meet, whether they're selling to enterprises or buying from other vendors in the sales cycle? I know you touched on a few things, but in not like necessarily like the beginning check marks, but like because you've seen so many. And so where is it right now that you feel like you're repeating yourself over and over and over again? And it's like, just please do this. Please.
Sure. So I'll repeat a few. I haven't
Yeah.
mentioned this one yet, but
Okay.
have a zero trust architecture. Whatever that means, you can call it limited access, minimal permissions, whatever, right? And then elevate as needed.
Can you break
Definitely
that down a little bit for a CEO who maybe not be technical?
So let's look
But
at
the
where our
linking to the
data
business
is,
goal.
right? And only have people access the data that who needs it, right? No more, no less. Even IT people shouldn't have access to that data. That's about it. So minimal access to everything, especially
Right. So
service accounts, elevated permissions, things like that.
So it would be helpful if the CEO sits down basically with the CISO, be like, here are all the data types. And we're going to say no one has access to this, limited access for this reason, this reason, this reason. And that will help to be logical and rational in a way that they can understand where the data is going, because data is the biggest
Right.
thing, right? Like it's like if you don't even know how to answer that in front of your prospects and customers as well, and also your partners or future investors, you're kind of screwed.
Yep. So, I mean, you can explain it in a way where how you protect your house and
Yes.
your valuables inside your house, right? You can have so many locks on your door, but a lot of people have access to those keys. They can copy keys, whatever. But then you have a safe sitting inside your closet that has limited access. Maybe it has a touch screen or a combination. But then for your most valuable stuff, you probably have some secret opening in your floor that opens up and your safe is bolted to the floor or the foundation of the house, which is not accessible. And only you or one other person might have access to that. Maybe that's a better way. I don't know.
I love that. That is the clip. Thank you. Yes, that is the great. Yes. Thanks for playing ping pong.
Indeed.
I don't even think we're playing ping pong. I think we're playing softball. Okay, so what advice would you give to startups aiming to establish credibility in the marketplace as a security vendor? Because there's just so many out there. So besides the credentials itself, like the hardcore and the technical stuff, but what are some soft stuff that they need to be seen as credible? So for these enterprises to consider them as the top 3 bids in the marketplace.
I mean, we talked about security basics before, right? So,
Yeah. But what makes them stand out that you'd be like, and from an investor standpoint, like, man, this security company is really different kind of thing. Like, because it's like fishing rods. I kind of see it like RAI. You go to RAI and you have a bunch of fishing rods against the wall. And
right.
you're like, all of them look fucking the same, right? But then at the very upfront area where they're promoting like the top 3 or 5, you're like, oh, this is best if you're a newcomer. This is best if you have this. This is, you know, etc. And then you're like, oh, the color is different, or they have this kind of feature, or whatever, or you know, whatever reviews and stuff. What kind of allows you to say, you know, they really not only have potential, but as an enterprise, I feel like I can rely on them, that they can actually be adopted across the organization. And even though they're small fish, that they are very valuable because they're solving a problem.
So, I mean, we can use Zoom as an example, right?
Yeah.
So they built security into the product, not just because I was an advisor there. They built security. This was before I was a CISO.
Yeah, 2011.
Yeah, exactly. But from day one, they built security into the product at all points. The only time it got questioned was when the pandemic hit, and then people found all these supposed issues with it. But if you look at the other web conferencing products, those were all in their infant stages, and Zoom was already ahead. So they already had the trust of everybody. They made their product scalable from the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't start selling to small and medium business without your product being able to scale from the start, because you can't tell these larger companies you're trying to sell to that, oh, it's on our roadmap to scale. That can't be an excuse. It has to be scalable out of the box.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think it just really loops through for the hard-hitting advice to founders of, please, 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 even if you can't right now, just know when you're going to invest in cybersecurity. Have a freaking plan and talk to people about it. Your investors, your advisors, the type of customers that maybe even if they're a single use case, but they were a customer, as to understand what their needs and where they're going, what they would need. So you could be prepared and ready, right? So Todd, your t-shirt today says, don't email me. But people know that you're an incredible expert. Instead of emailing you, are they able to DM you on LinkedIn?
Certainly. This is courtesy of Material Security. I love it. They're a good company too.
I love it. Todd, this was so much fun. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, honestly.
Awesome. Indeed. That was easier than I expected.
100%. It's because we're friends. High five.
There you go.